the September 5th meeting of the Dayton Parks Commission. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you. Looks like we'll start with swearing in of one new commissioner.
So, how do we do this? We do this in the front.
Yeah, it was in the front.
I'm going to step down here, Brad. Oh, do we need that mic?
Got it. Oh, the karaoke mic.
All right. We have to swap the mic around a bit here. Say after me. I, Brad Cole, do solemnly swear
I, Brad Cole, do solemnly swear
or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will discharge faithfully the duties of the office
and that I will discharge faithfully the duties of the office
for the City of Dayton as a Park Commissioner
for the City of Dayton as a Park Commissioner
in the counties of Hennepin and Wright,
in the counties of Hennepin and Wright,
the State of Minnesota,
according
to law and the best of my judgment and ability.
according to law and the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations, you're sworn in.
All right. All right, and approval of the agenda. I don't think we have any changes to it or anything. Marty, do we need a motion for the approval? If it's as is?
I think
Yes,
we'll
all right. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I motion.
All right.
Which one? Does it matter?
Let's just sign that one there, sorry.
No, all good.
You need to finish it.
This is important.
All right, there we go.
All right, so Carrie approved, or motion to approve the agenda.
I motion.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, I've got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda, routine items enacted with one motion. Just the approval of minutes from the last meeting, which I reviewed at home. They look good to me.
I motion to
All
approve.
right.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
So those pass. Open forum limited to 3 minutes for non-agenda items. State your name and address. No action will be taken, and items will be referred back to staff and/or council. You guys are here for CDAA. Is there anyone online?
Not that I can see.
All right. Move on to council update. What do you have for us, Councilman Trost?
Thank you. So Doug came and presented in front of the council last meeting. I think it was last meeting. So that was good information that we were able to get from him. Other than that, we're just heavy and deep into budget season. So if you're paying attention to what's going on there, if you know what you want, let people know. And we vote on we're hoping to have a final vote on the preliminary tax base in the next meeting, next Tuesday. That's really the big stuff going on.
Cool. Thank you. All right, moving on to the regular meeting. Item B is a CDAA presentation. Not sure how you guys want to run it, but
So apparently it's not working.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, so we'll probably just sit here and kind of talk to
Sure.
our slides.
yeah.
Make them big. Turn around.
Okay, so, well, let's just talk to them and they can, there isn't anything that we'll show them if we have to. Some
Go ahead and
stuff.
state your names and
Yep,
addresses
so,
first. that'd be great.
Rick Klepner, 12701 Overlook Drive in Dayton, Minnesota.
Kevin Folds, 11240 109th Avenue North in Dayton.
I'm the executive director-elect of CDAA. John Whalen, the executive director, fortunately couldn't make it, had something come up at the last minute.
And I'm an advising director.
Sure.
So we've been involved with CDA for a long time. Probably 15, I've been 15 some years, maybe pushing
20-ish.
20. Yeah, so.
2022.
Just a little agenda here. We kind of want to give you an overview of what CDA is for those that are not familiar with our organization. Little update on what our field usage is, what our long-term planning process, and what our requests, what we see as some needs long-term. And then we'll kind of, and part of that is going to be fields, and specifically more of a larger complex we feel is the right fit. And we'll kind of give you some examples. We'll give you send this presentation out to Marty, and you can forward it to you guys so you can see it later. So.
Yeah, we can talk about CDA. The purpose, the reason why we have CDA is to really provide the youth of Champlin, Dayton, and surrounding communities the benefit of having youth sports. So it was formed in 1976, and the sports are added as we come up with new interests. Our latest one has been lacrosse a couple of years ago.
Sure.
And it's an all-volunteer organization. So what you find as our kids have moved through, they realize as they talk to other friends that there's no other organization like CDA around with the breadth and the depth of sports. So we're pretty lucky to have it in the communities.
Why don't you
I can talk about this
Yep.
one. So basketball, baseball, football, lacrosse, soccer, slow pitch softball, track and field, and volleyball. So about 3,000 or over 3,000 registrations per year.
Okay.
These sports are running all the time, 24/7. Wow.
Yeah,
so it seems like for some of the directors.
12 months a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everywhere from preschool all the way through 12th grade,
Okay.
depending on the sport.
And that's the unique side of CDA. Most of the time when you get into some of the high schools, you need to make the team. But we have a lot of sports, most of the sports play all the way to 12th grade. And it's an opportunity for the kids to keep playing, and that's why you have a lot of good athletes at these schools. There's a lot playing CDA too that are every bit as good and can make a team anywhere in the state generally.
We do have some partnerships, obviously, with the city of Dayton and Champlin. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the funding, but we do partnership on some of that stuff. The schools, Champlin Park High School is the main one that we partner with on stuff. We help fund a lot of stuff. We work with them on certain things. Jackson Middle School and the elementary schools, both financially, we help and do some programs. We've provided even Jackson Middle School, their after-school programs. They've come to us before saying, hey, we don't have a coach, and we reach out to our coaches community and see who might be able to help with those programs, and we've done that several times to help them find coaches so that they can have their after-school program, because in some cases, some kids just can't do the transportation, and that after-school is very key to them, and so so in some cases, that's all they can get for sports is the after school at Jackson or at Dayton Elementary.
Sure.
So coaching help, equipment help. A lot of times they're strapped for, feedback, trapped for equipment and other things that they need, balls, uniforms, stuff like that. And we help with that. We have some sponsors that we run some pull tabs at Broadway Pizza, Chili Lime over in Champlin, and the Little Bar, if you're familiar with those.
Oh, yeah.
That gives us a good boost. It's charitable gambling, so it allows us to not only have good programming and help all kids participate in sports, but really giving our coaches training that they need, running extra clinics everywhere else, getting good equipment, safe equipment, updated equipment, and training and background checks for our coaches. So we do a lot of overhead that other communities don't do in their programs, and this allows us to do that. As well as we have some local business. We got to try to keep it local. So Champlin Athletic, we put a lot of stuff, a lot of requests and equipment for our programs through Champlin Athletic, as well as a photo guy is the name of a guy who does some business and takes pictures of the kids too. Well, I'll keep going. In addition to that program is we give out Patrick Timmons Scholarship. So Patrick was a kid who passed away early on, and we put a scholarship in place for him. So $10,000 a year. So we generally do around 10 $1,000 scholarships for kids, seniors going to school or extra training that they're going to do after school. They apply, they write essays, and then are chosen by blind work, where basically they give us an overview of what they're doing and background, answer some questions, and then they're chosen. And so every year that gets given to the kids at the scholarship presentations at the high school. And again, we talked about financial support for participation fees for those that need assistance. High school booster programs where, I don't know if you know, or were they trying to get a lot of either more coaching help or more ability to take a bus somewhere for some of these things. So they need support, not only what the school gives them, but the boosters are gaining money too. So we help them with that. And faculty, facility improvements. So examples here, McNeil Park improvements, Central Park baseball and soccer field improvements, and any kind of letters of support for some grant proposals you guys do.
One thing I'll other note is like on the Patrick Timmons, that's not just the Chample Park. We there have almost every year there's always at least one. I shouldn't say always, but typically there's one that's either Osseo, Rogers, Charter, other schools too. So it's not strictly with that.
True.
It's open to anybody that participated with CDAA.
Right.
So investing kind of in our future, we have been. There is with the city there is a fund set up that we pay a user fee and. At least 60% of that user fee that we pay to the cities of Champlin and Dayton go into that, and I think it's almost 100% of the Dayton money goes into that fund. Marty might correct me if he knows.
No, I
he's
think you're
taken
about
some.
right.
And then we've usually donated an extra 5,000 or more. So we're typically last year I think the total donation was like $20,000. Last year that was given to that, and you'll probably see at least that much every year going forward. Back in 2017, we started an internal fund for facility purposes. We started doing some research long-term planning. At that time, talked to each of the sports, talked to other organizations, so we also partner with some of the other organizations, sports organizations that we're not involved with. There's Force Soccer, there's Champlain Park Baseball Association, and other organizations around us that we actually even do some leagues with Osseo Maple Grove, Brooklyn Park Athletic Association. So we interviewed a lot of them, saw what they had, what we need, with each of the sports, and we identified two major needs. One is indoor court space, and we've been working on towards something with the city of Champlin on that. And the other thing is fields. With the growth in the city of Dayton and long term where it's going to be, we are definitely going to be short on fields, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So talking a little bit about the growth, so we talked about the need of fields, mostly talking about the rest of the time about the needs for fields. 6 years ago, our ratio of Champlin to Dayton participants was about 6 to 1 in our organization, and is also some in Brooklyn Park, but just the ratio between those two cities. This year, our outdoor sports, it's a 3 to 1. So we've doubled the ratio in 6 years. And if we just look at the participants, it's the youngest participants, so we just look at 8 and under, it's actually a 2 to 1 ratio.
Okay.
So luckily, the age of the city of Champlin has gotten a little bit older, and it's kind of matched a little bit the city of Dayton, but that's not going to continue. Champlin's going to pretty much going to flat out with their participation, and Dayton's going to climb. So we've gotten a little bit of a reprieve right now. We're tight on space. It's going to get pretty serious in not too many more years. Anything else you want to add, Kevin?
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch that growth come. And, we see it through your planning commission and all the stuff that's being built, and it's as expected. And then the things that we don't want to lose is we don't want to lose our kids to other programs. We want them to play CDA. They want to play in the parks near them. And to run some of these big programs, we need some big space.
And so currently I talked about where we're at. We're okay. We're a little tight on some of the sports with fields. We're managing on that. Football might be okay with the addition that turf added to the high school, which has kind of helped. They're utilizing that a little bit, so they're probably okay. We mentioned we added lacrosse recently. We're scrambling, finding space for them, game space and other space. We've gotten the use of Central Park available for them in recent years, so that's helped on that. But it is a growing sport, and so that's going to require more space. Softball, we made some arrangements with Brooklyn Park, which has allowed us to continue to have program, and they play a lot of their games. Brooklyn Park Field, some of them in Champlin. And then baseball uses heavily the Central Park here, along with a lot of other fields in the area. Baseball does not have very good, well, I'll say game fields. They have two smaller good game fields and one large big field. So that's one as far as game space. They're tight on good space there. Andrews Park, it's a pretty good soccer facility for us right now. We do have some fields there. The softball fields are mostly used by the city. We do have one day a week that our teams play there. But there are two large soccer fields plus a smaller area that we use heavily. We were a little tight on soccer fields this year because they had to do some work on some of the fields, Andrews, and they were going to do that in the spring. Because of all the rain that happened this spring, they had to push, I think, that off into the summer, which created some issues for our soccer program. But that just shows how tight we are on space. They didn't have much leeway on working with that.
So a lot of partnerships we do with Brooklyn Park, if you remember where some of their fields are, way in Noble, so you can't get much farther away than here in Dayton. So when the kids are playing soccer, they need to go a long ways to get over to those fields. So we'd like to pull it this way a bit.
Right.
And have it in our program.
Right. We would rather utilize within the community than having to look through Brooklyn Park for space. I mean, we do have participants with Brooklyn Park, so we have it in there, but it's obviously not ideal for somebody living in Dayton to have to drive to Brooklyn Park. So a few benchmark, and again, I'll provide this to you, but so we've worked with actually an old Park and Rec director in the city of Champlin, who's Eric Carlson, and he works for another city now, but he has done some research and provided some data information. So just to give you an idea what, benchmark for cities, it's about 10 baseball, softball fields per 10,000 residents is pretty typical. 8 soccer, football fields per 10,000 residents. And those include both city and school in that. And so we're a little overall, Champlin is about right. Dayton was about right when we were 5,000. It's under right now where it needs to be. The other benchmark is number of acres that a city, not including the city, the school, of mowed land specifically for playgrounds, parks, so not including golf courses or nature areas, is about, the rule of thumb is about 100 actively mowed acres per 10,000 residents. And I would say, and Marty could correct me, we're maybe generously 50 right now.
Yeah, somewhere in that region.
Yeah, so we're about half. Now, the range of the cities on the low end from research was about 75, upper ends, 150, 200 acres, but on average it was about 100. So just to give you an idea where some benchmarks, obviously the city's got to decide where they want to be on that, but we're definitely below the normal distribution of cities. So one request I mentioned having is really to have a larger complex is what we're seeing for the future, and there's a few reasons for that. Flexibility is one. By having the larger space, as our needs change for different sports, one sport grows, one doesn't, having a larger space is easier to over decades to change that space. If you have smaller spaces, you tend to design them for certain fields, and there's not a lot of flexibility there.
It certainly has changed at Andrews. If you know any history about Andrews, there have been all kinds of different sporting activities there. And they're coming in, coming out, depending on what they need. And they have the space to be able to do that. They don't have the parking, but they do have the space to move the fields around.
The other thing is it allows a little more easier to integrate with playgrounds and trails. So if you think about a lot of the families that come and use and go to these events, if they're bringing practice, a lot of parents say, hey, I want to go out and walk around on the trails. I need to take my younger kids to the playground, keep them entertained. So those type of things are very important. Having a larger park allows you to have fewer, less expense in trying to do that. The other thing is community events, having a larger space long-term to have, larger events. We do have Stevens Park, but that's going to have limitations. If you get to larger events where if you're going to have, 5,000 people at it, you're not going to be able to have that there. You don't have any kind of parking anywhere near that for the size of event. If you start to look way down the road for size events, city, where we're going to have for population. Maintenance, having it all in one place makes it easier on Marty, a lower cost, less time having to spend travel, hauling equipment from one place to the other. Then the experience for the participants. We kind of give kind of an example with basketball. We're talking outdoor, but I'll use the example. Maple Grove had built a basketball court facility attached to one of the middle schools, and they put 3 courts there with glass walls and kind of a dining area, seating area. What we found from there, as opposed to in the middle school where they just had individual schools, people stayed and watched. They were interested. There was enough space for them to watch because there was multiple games going around. It wasn't just the next game. They could see their friends, they could see neighbors and such. They could go watch and do that. And that's the kind of thing typically you'll see at tournaments. People will stay and watch and do that. So it's part of the experience. We're competing against kids playing, exercising their thumbs. So we want kids out, having a good time, and adding to that experience is having, hey, I can go see my friends play. I can see the neighbors playing. So they're spending more time outside, enjoying overall so that they play again next year.
Another part about the culmination of many of these outdoor sports is some kind of a jamboree, end-of-year tournament. So you'll see tons of soccer kids on a field or a baseball tournament with lots of kids. Having them everywhere is really exciting for them, and they often call that as a highlight of the year. So having the space to do that instead of being split out all over the place where you kind of go, that's it, the end of the season, and there's really no one around. Whereas we have that highlight in many of our sports, end of the year big tournaments.
The other thing is revenue options, either for us or the city. If you get things spread out, you just don't, there's not enough density to justify somebody spending the time to say run concessions at a place like that. And again, adding to that experience. So I've got some examples. It's going to be a little difficult probably for you to see. I'll turn it around and show you a few of these things and talk a little bit about this. This first one is Brooklyn Park Noble Sports Complex. They've got some baseball fields and soccer fields.
Is that the one right off 610?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
correct. Yep. And so that one is by a school, so there's additional space around there. They're actually right next to a church. They actually hold their Tater Days. Brooklyn Park is held here, and they utilize the extra space by the church to run that. But again, having that large space where they can utilize it to hold events. The next one is, and I wanted to show some smaller towns, not just the big suburbs. Here's Buffalo, probably where the city of Dayton is going to probably get closer in size. Near their, some of their maintenance facilities, multiple fields. With multiple sports, parking all around. Oops, probably going the wrong
Rodeo
direction.
grounds?
Yes, I think that's where it was, yes. Yep. St. Michael, in this case, again, near their facilities, but they also have integrated, I think there's a BMX bike trail
about that as a
located there.
kid?
So depending on what the city wants, putting trails or other things with large complex, it's very easy much easier to try and do those type of things with a larger facility. Apple Valley, this is an example. The shaded areas are actually schools, so they put them right by the schools. Give a lot of field examples here. Obviously, we don't know what the school district's plans are, so I don't know if that's something we can plan on. But then again, we're not talking one facility long term, but by the time city is done growing, so maybe down the road, a second one could be in conjunction with any additional schools in the area. Obviously, this has been a success behind us. Most of those baseball fields are actually on school district property, but Marty's staff takes care of them, so it was a good partnership that we have there, and it keeps the fields in good shape. We've had less luck at some of the other schools where City of Champlin used to try and take care of them. They had to back away, and those fields have really gotten to poor shape since then. Another example in Bloomington, Dred Scott Field, very old, been around a long time. They planned this out and bought the land back when it was all pastures around there. Ramsey has done, I don't have shown there, but they've bought land long in advance of when they needed. They built out the parks as they needed. They've got a couple of large ones. I think one of them's barely been touched. Another one's about half built out. So they bought the land quite a bit of in advance. Another one, Eden Prairie. This is a case of they have some nature area, so they built trails through the nature area, so parents can go and see the locations or walk through the woods while the kids are practicing. And the final one, just more recently, show a recent example of something totally different, is Maple Grove here. They put in four turf fields for soccer and football. That's the city development, but it was by the high school in that case. So just to get you to thinking, show you some examples of things that are out there. What specifically we would need is something I think we'd have to talk about and get look at some demographics. I had mentioned probably baseball fields as a big thing where they're at, and we probably could look at with the city of Champlin, if we want to do something that's more dedicated towards one sport, can we do some adjustments and make maybe one sport's at the Dayton thing and another sport is their main thing is at a Champlin field. Those things are available. Guess, do you have questions for us? I guess would be the next thing.
I did have one. So when you were earlier on, you were talking about the baseball fields, and it sounded like there might be sort of tiers or different levels of baseball field. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So
what would they be?
So typically with the baseball fields, you want grass infield.
Okay.
It's a little bit of safety. It's a little bit part of the experience. So we have J-Rack and Reynolds in Champlin, our small fields that are grassed. And then we have Andrews Park. There's one park there that's a nice grass field. We have access to the high school fields also. And there is a larger field at J-Rack that's not quite as nice, but it's adequate and it does it. We end up here at Dayton. It's kept as good as it can, but it is a dirt field. It's it does get a bit sandy, such. So when you talk about the amount of use of the playgrounds, school gets to use it and such. It's tough for Marty's staff to keep up and get it to where we would want a better baseball field. It's good, for our age group that's using it. It's probably adequate, but we would like some. We probably would plan on some nicer fields.
Okay.
Grass infield probably is easier to maintain if you do all grass. Than the sand. Typically, softball is going to be on dirt fields. Anyway, so that's what I talked about as far as having game baseball fields. We're lacking that at some of the levels.
Cool.
We do, like mentioned, we've been putting money away, both in registrations and some of our gambling funds that we are able to help. Either in purchasing the land or development of the parks. I know we've mentioned that to the city council before. I don't know, it was probably before you were on the city council, last time we met with the council, but there is funds. I don't think we're going to mention how much we have in an open meeting, but we're open to talking to staff later,
Sure.
you know, how much we have available to assist in that.
Ideally, we'd like to get the land secured and let us, and CDA, build it out. Us and other partners, there's a lot of money out there that we can find to put in facilities for the youth. And the biggest part is finding it and getting the land.
Right now, on another board, Champlain Park Baseball Association, and, you know, we just spent a lot of money on a scoreboard at the high school stadium. You know, nice, but I think money could be spent towards other things, you know, in parkland, and fields, and Dayton, rather than that. But, you know, if we don't spend the money, it gets taxed, and so we're going to spend the money.
Yeah.
And so we've done some savings there. That association's like, you know, we don't want to give the state more tax money
Yep.
than we have to. So longer, you know, and so until, you know, we can give more money, but until the city's got land, we want to see that commitment before we're going to
Sure.
start donating much larger amounts.
So logistically, what does a purchase of land look like when it's you and the city involved as an organization? Like who ends up owning it, and what's the agreement, or what has that
Ideally,
looked like in
that's
the
the
past?
city owned.
City owns it.
Yeah.
City owned, and you just help out with the agreement of some form that you get.
If needed, you know,
Okay.
that's really up to the, you know, city, you know,
Okay.
how they want to operate that.
How many acres do you need for a wheel of baseball fields? Ideally.
Well, it depends on the size. So what we've talked about before is really looking at, you know, 60, 70 acres. If you look at Andrews Park, that's 40 acres. But that's shoehorned in, and that's a city of probably 2/3 to half what the city of Dayton is eventually going to be. So it's a little tough to fit. You know, that's, like I said, parking's always been an issue there. Everything is jammed in there pretty tight. It works.
It works, but they're full. And they would die for space now. And so they're really trying to work things out, but it's pretty tough. And 40, that's the biggest plot they have.
Yeah.
And so, and we know that it's undersized.
Most of the examples I showed you there, a lot of them were 60, 70. I think the smallest was probably 40. I think there were some that were 80 acres.
And the biggest thing that is, it gives you so much flexibility, right? That as a place to gather. I mean, that's a big gathering place for the city of Champlain, and it has limited parking. If it's done right, you have a lot of room here and have a lot of different city events. So,
I hate to interrupt. I'm sorry. Is it okay if I ask a question?
Yeah, please do.
Do you guys have any idea or benchmarks of once the land's purchased, what it actually costs to build out the land itself? Approximate? Because I know I've asked staff before, and we don't really have a number of what it would take. Because there's two pieces in this, right? First we get the land, then we got to develop the land into the parks.
Right.
So there's kind of in my mind, there's two major costs involved.
Correct.
And so the land part, I have a good idea how much it costs per acre in Dayton. I don't know is once we have the land, what does it actually take to then make it usable for the CDA?
It depends on, you know, obviously it depends on what you're buying, because there could be.
There's a lot of hills in Dayton. Believe it or
Yeah,
not,
that-
a lot of that open space farmland is very hilly. I've
Yes.
had the opportunity to ride on a four-wheeler, and it's not flat.
Yeah.
So if you want to get baseball fields in there, it's going to be a lot of dirt to move, for sure.
Exactly, that's a big part of it. It's
Yep.
also the soil condition. You can,
It's all clay.
depending, it's all clay, then you gotta look at, well, how, you either gotta have really good you have to have good drainage one way or the other, whether it's through the slope or whether it's you haul in sand to help with that. A lot of tiles, so depends on what you buy. It depends on what you're gonna do with it. Are you gonna upfront, like, you know, it's a lot cheaper to light it up front, but depending on how many fields, a wheel probably isn't. Well, we did light Sandros Park. That was a couple $100,000 years ago. I know it's a lot cheaper to do it up front when you're building it, but to do a wheel, you're probably. I would assume it's still less than $1 million to do a wheel, to light a wheel, but it might.
a wheel is for
Four
baseball
fields. Four
fields
fields
together. It
together.
looks like a wheel.
Yep.
Yeah.
But what about even just like the sod and the backstops and the whole thing? Do you have any idea? Like if we had 60 acres tomorrow, do you have any idea what it would cost you all to do it?
I know. And that's where, once you have the money, we can start, you know, contributing to that. There is groups of grants that are available to help with that.
Okay.
You know, the Twins Community Fund is a big part, you know, It's one of their main things is building more fields for kids to play. So there's a lot of money to do that, but they generally want you to have the land first.
I've got one more question, it's kind of semi-unrelated to this, but more about your cause. I'm going to ask you a loaded question because I know the answer, in fairness to everyone on the committee. 2020, COVID hit. You guys weren't doing sports, correct? Or limited sports comparatively?
Limited sports, yes.
But you guys still donated to the city, correct? The same amount you normally donate in good faith? Okay, thank you.
We still gave a donation.
Yeah, every year. So yeah, it kind of depends on how you want to build out the city into that park. I mean, Andrews Park, my wife played at Andrews Park on a softball field. I think all they did was grade it and put up a backstop, and then that was a field. So and how much is it to grade it and throw down some sod for soccer squares? So a lot of options there, things we can really get tangible about based on the needs and finding that plot, and then we can try to get some estimates after that.
Yeah, and it again depends on how, are you gonna do the whole thing, or you're gonna do a partial of it, so.
Right. It needs a master plan like anything.
I have a lot of questions, but
Sure, drill away.
would you guys, being the CDAA, ideal location would be right in between the two cities? Would that be, is that ideal, or do we want to go further west because we have so much already, with Andrews and Champlin, or what are your guys' thoughts for an ideal spot if you were to have your pick?
Ideally closer this way, but at this point, I think anything is open at this point, depending on, where, it also depends on location relative to roads, that quick access to
Yeah,
what
you
the
need
roads.
some be able to move traffic. And,
Sure.
Yeah, ideally we want it maybe middle of the city.
Yeah.
We can, but
What are the chances, you guys might know this one more, but what are the chances of getting a partnership here with Three Rivers? Thinking of basically as you go Hayden Lake and you're going to nothing, that none of the Elm Creek, like I'm just thinking like on the backside of
If you
Elm
want their
Creek.
land,
What's that?
they won't give up land.
They will not.
They will not give you an inch.
They-
So if you're asking for their land, I can tell you, I'll speak on their
It's
behalf, and they
never
can
on-
yell at me
yeah.
later because
It's
I
never
have
on
plenty
the
to yell at them
table.
about. The answer is no.
Yeah.
So
I'm just thinking
in
like
order
a
for us
back
to build,
edge of
you know,
Elm
we built-
Creek or something where, it's kind of on the, as you're going from Dayton to Champlin, something on the back edge of the park, part of the park maybe doesn't get a lot of activity. Okay.
they don't care.
Perfect.
No, even like on Zanzibar there,
Yep.
if we ever have to redo that road or widen that road, we won't really be able to go into Rivers Park District because that's all original old growth forest. So it has to go into the property line when that road eventually expands out. So
unless
yeah.
you got something else to trade.
Yeah.
Well,
Could we offer them a swap or something somewhere else? I'm just
Yeah,
wondering.
well, we did that for the drainage for the roundabout at
Yeah.
the top of Pine View.
Yep.
And we had to spend a lot of money to buy land way else, someplace else to swap them. And I think the value of the land they gave us versus the value of the land they got was significantly in proportionate.
Interesting.
That's how hard it was to work with them. Working with Rivers Park District is not easy, and you would think for the $88 million a year they get from taxpayers, they'd be more willing to work with the cities that they're in, but they're not. So,
I've worked with them for almost 20 years.
well, there you go.
Yeah. No, I was just curious
You
to
have
see if
any-
there's anything locally here that
If you got some way to get them to do it, then by all means.
we'll see.
I won't stand your
don't
way.
think that I have a better end.
Need leverage points.
So, Fernbrook, we were talking about the 4 football fields there in Maple Grove. That's right next to the high school. When you're showing your examples, is that connected right next to the dome as well? Is that where those football fields went?
No,
in?
they're actually
across the street.
across the street from the high
Next to
school.
our existing park they have.
Yeah, there's the stadium, which is the high school, and
I was
they
gonna
have
say, is
just north, this side of the stadium is those fields.
So I was thinking too, like with whether it's baseball, golf, a lot of different sports where we have winter practices, etc. Would you guys ever want to have some sort of a dome part of it connected? I mean, domes are tricky, but obviously with Brooklyn Park Dome going now to be just for tennis essentially, we don't have another dome. Northern Palms went away, the golf dome went away. There's no other golf dome. There's potential for revenue source, right? We don't have a golf dome or golf sim in the city of Dayton. Something for a revenue source where it's connected to, and then you can use it for baseball teams, golf teams, etc. Track practice. I mean, the Maple Grove Dome, it seems like they have a lot of people doing a lot of different things in there.
Yeah,
and then the community walks a lot, and they have, that's a revenue source too. So I'm just trying to think of like how we can make it maybe year round, or maybe there's a rink attached to it.
Even
or,
if you're just sharing the parking space, or if it's it's practice space during the summer when you take the dome down. Those are all great ideas. As far as dome for our sports, there, there are some domes around, we've used for some practice stuff. Maple
Like in the
Grove.
spring when it's wet and
Right.
raining and
Yeah,
you have
that's
problems.
really is always tight. I know in Oak Ramsey, their athletic association's actually putting up the largest dome in the state.
Is that Adrenaline or by
Right
Adrenaline?
next to
Trying
Adrenaline,
to.
yeah. They're
Okay.
trying to.
They're trying,
They got,
okay.
they're in the middle of a
figure out
lawsuit
parking.
right now because the lack of parking. But there's that. There's a good chance that there'll end up being a dome at the high school eventually. I know the city of Brooklyn Park has talked about contributing.
At Chapel Park?
Yeah, there's a chance that that might eventually get a dome. But again, that's practice for the, for their groups there. Art sports, most of our sports are rec sports, so they're typically not a lot of dome use sports. There are other associations that we work with, Gem Park Fast Pitch. They use, they play a lot of games at Maple Grove and leagues there. You have lacrosse, which is with us. That sport's not mature enough that there's not a lot of winter activity there because they use a lot of hockey players in that sport, and so it's competing for time. So it's typically a early spring through fall sport, but that'll change over time. So
I understand, like even like with different types of materials for the for flooring, basketball and volleyball, which you already have, having another home for that, because I know it's going to keep growing.
Yeah.
And I know it's so hard to. I have some friends that are pretty involved in the basketball world, and they just can't get courts anywhere.
It is a severe shortage
Yes,
in the metro
especially
area.
up here.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah,
That-
it's tricky to fill a dome all the time and get it paid for and heat it.
Have you guys ever looked at cost before of a dome?
No, not anything that's crossed up our mind at all at this stage.
Yeah,
I think our emphasis is trying to get the big sports field complexes where we've been focusing on efforts, and maybe that's somewhere where we could incorporate a dome or some
Yeah.
kind of an indoor structure.
The turf for a dome is probably going to be close to $1 million by
Right.
the time you prep it and get the turf down, and then you got the dome itself. And Maple Grove, I believe, budgets about $100,000 a year just for keeping it inflated and heated.
Yeah.
So they're fairly expensive to run, fairly cheap to build, relatively
Yeah, when you
speaking.
look at comparing it to building out a huge volleyball, basketball, any of those complexes, it's a lot less expensive, but way more
your costs,
expensive. Your
yeah.
yearly cost is much higher.
Right, and then it is only winter at that point if you put in so that's why,
And then it takes away. I'm just saying, I'm trying to, when you're talking about different things that could benefit all people for the community, trying to think about year-round how we draw, because that's pretty cool what they've done next to the school there with the different fields.
Great
and,
partnerships they're
Yeah.
able to do there. And so we need a high school in the city or something with some land around it, right? That's where it kind of limits our options. So, and the more we wait, the more expensive it gets. So we just have to put a stake down. And
Yeah, and that's the thing when you talk about location. Obviously, if you're by land that can be developed, it's obviously can be very expensive. You need to get land. 2040 land is probably what you're targeting. At least 2030 land. Obviously, anything that's 2020 is too expensive right now because it's developable. Developers can get loans from the bank for all the purchased land, so it's much more expensive. But we would be happy to, sit down with, at any time to talk about location-specific pros and cons from our viewpoint. Just a little tough without maps and
Yeah.
videos to be able to talk that, and I think we need to, but if there is land, my understanding is we've now engaged a broker to look for some land, so we would be more than happy to, discuss pros and cons, give our inputs.
Yeah. And do it
before
fast.
Before before the city, checks off and does it, we may, could have some inputs, pros or cons on it.
I have to say, it's not for the lack of trying to find, a big tract of land. We've been close a couple of times, and the rug's been pulled out from underneath us on a couple of times here, and so it's something that we're actively, looking for these, the available land before it all does go. As the pipe moves across, the developments, and that the land next to it goes up in price, so we've got to act quickly here, and I think that we're doing it as much as we can currently. There are some things out there, but they're at this level at the moment, so...
With what, 60, 70 grand an acre right now for current land, I think?
Yeah.
That's what it goes for. So yeah, you're not looking
Well,
at
which,
you're not looking at current land.
where, oh, yeah. For current.
Anything in
Yeah,
current,
yeah,
like you
yeah,
could build in
2020
today.
land, yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I
anything,
mean.
not even
Let's do
2020 current, like, because 2020 is different than current. So
Okay.
the current stuff is all 60, 70 grand, thousand an acre. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
you're,
what,
you're not,
I know Canopin, when they did their last bonding, they were looking at buying some land for school, and they budgeted like, I think they said 80,000 acre they wanted, and it ended up selling for like 150,000.
yeah.
So timing is, you can play that game and get burned on it. They needed to pull the string, years before.
Yeah, but if you look at like 2050, 2055 plus land, my guess is you're probably talking 10 to 15,000 an
15,000, yeah.
acre, maybe 20,000 an acre.
Right.
So 1/3 to 1/4 the cost.
Right. Even
But you're going to be
24
in the middle of nowhere when it's first built. So the long-term thought then has to be, what's the long-term goal here? Is it'll be in the center of the city or near the center of the city. There'll be a bunch of stuff around it, like those kind of things. I think are.
But
They-
even 2040 land is, reasonably priced probably at this point. But he said 2030 land's
Yeah.
getting a bit expensive probably.
Yeah, we're happy to look at anything that you're considering. I mean, when you have development coming from three corners, it's going to chew up fast, right? Because you're not that far from any of the properties that are being developed, and I think it's a little more unique than Brooklyn Park that develops going north, and they're very staged about it, and so they could predict really what that land value is going to be as they're coming. But here it's coming from many different directions, and it's important that I'd like to understand your priorities as a body, and what sort of things that you guys really push with the city, and how we can help you if one of our things are the top priorities for you, getting a piece of land.
Yeah, I think having a sports complex has been something that's been discussed since I started 2 years ago. I'd say it's definitely one of the priorities in my mind as a commissioner up here, and what you guys have done is extremely helpful. I think it's maybe my first presentation from you, so knowing how it works, being able to ask these questions is really helpful, and knowing what's available from you and what your needs are.
And our preference actually is to go back to the term community park, because
Yeah.
it
Community
is
park.
more than just sports complex.
For sure.
I
Okay.
think you're going to build trails,
Sure.
parks, playgrounds into
Playgrounds.
it at the same time.
And you
Other
can have events
features.
there, and you
Yeah.
should have events there.
Sure.
Once upon a time, the Dayton Lions wanted a park and a participation there, and to be able to contribute, and they probably still do. But we're more maybe pushing more on some of the fields, and we want to get into those partnerships
Sure.
as soon as we find the place.
Yeah.
Right. Makes sense.
And I think that was part of Doug's presentation to the council 2 weeks ago, is the fact that we just started thinking about, again, I don't like the term sports complex either, but
Yeah.
the sports complex idea around that, it's the term we use, so, yeah, like a community park area.
I think
It's
that
important.
community park
City park.
sounds better, right? It's for everyone, because not all the kids
Not
play
just-
sports,
yeah,
but
sure.
they do go on trails, they do bike, they could skateboard, who knows what might be there.
Mm-hmm.
And they certainly will gather and attend concerts and festivals and whatever.
I mean,
It is for everyone.
It is, parks are the most used resource beyond streets in a city. Even more than trails, because when you start looking at the kids, the amount of time you spend, parents, the kids, grandparents
Sure.
going to see there, going to the playground and such, that they're the most utilized thing the city has.
Do you all
beyond
think,
streets.
do you all think if it went to bond, you'd have enough citizens in the city to vote for, to buy the land? There was a bond put on the ballot. What's your thoughts on that? Because that's what was brought up
Yeah.
last year, was on the ballot, was to put, just to bond it.
Yep, we missed the deadline.
Knowing with our change in population and the age of most of the homeowners, my gut feeling is there would be support, but obviously that's, how much is it?
Yeah,
what does that mean?
It always comes down to numbers.
It's,
Yep.
Yeah,
uh,
and it goes up as time goes on.
Yep.
Do you guys have any kind of a clue, like to do a build out like Andrews Park? similar to that? Are we thinking 5 million, 10 million? Is that, Matt, would you when you start, any clue?
That was what I was asking. I have no clue what that costs.
I
Yeah, I
can-
might as well just.
I can,
Someone, yeah. I mean, because obviously, if you just have the 4 baseball fields, that's totally different than Andrews Park. Because Andrews Park is, I mean, they have all sorts of family stuff.
Well, the
There's
splash pad
the
alone is
splash
what,
pad.
5 million or something like that. Where splash
Yeah.
pad's
So
not
my
cheap.
question is, are we looking at 5 million? Or are we looking at 30? Because it's a different, two different things.
well, again, the first thing is getting the land. Well,
And
it's
then
still
figuring it
cheap.
out after.
The price of land goes exponential anytime you get close to anywhere near development. The key is getting that, and then there are other resources. And how you build that out. It could be spread out over 10 years, or say, hey, we're gonna do it all at
We've been building out
once.
Andrews for 60 years. So,
Right.
all that
True.
stuff has come later.
Yeah,
and-
so it's
and,
tough to say, build Andrews, because that was built over 40 years.
Right. Okay.
or more.
So, I can try, I'm sure Marty probably has better resources to try and get some ideas or estimates on what
There's so many
people have done. But again,
intangibles in that, depending on what type
Yeah,
of land you get. If it's
it's-
how much dirt work you got to get there to get it graded, and all different kinds of utility questions. Where's your power source? All that kind of stuff plays into that. And what kind of filter we're going to be putting in there, and there's a lot of different movable parts in that. So it's not just here's a template. This is what you get for this dollar amount. So
yeah, it's pretty rare that they fully develop
Yeah.
larger parks all at once.
Yeah, that's very rare.
So it's tough for us to get that information,
Mm-hmm.
because people just don't do that very often.
So if you guys were to have a perfect way for it to go, obviously land first, maybe phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, something like that, where it's maybe a 20 to 25 year plan of here's where we want to get to, but we want to start with, one, get the land. 5 to 10 years from now, maybe you start on the baseball fields. 5, 10 years after that, maybe you add some more trails. Is that would that be ideally what you're looking to?
Yes,
would
but
be a
also
great
in,
goal?
in conjunction with your vision and the council's vision of how they want to bring in the trails or have events in the park. That has to come together with our investments that we want to do yearly to bring up the level that we need for the park. So it's kind of both.
And I think, once you've got the land, it gives you opportunities to apply for more grants and different kind of funding sources.
sure.
It shows you're serious about doing it, and so people are more apt to put it onto you. If it's on your CIP, then they will look at it more favourably if it's shovel ready and stuff to go. So
Exactly.
I think that really helps.
Yeah, if it's there, we can pull a lot of resources to find those.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to go. We got to start going. And somehow, whatever you guys think of that you need help to get it through, will it pass a referendum? You're doing investments for the future, just like any planning commission. You're not doing us for us necessarily. Maybe your kids, like my kids, they were going to get turf at Chaplin Park. They were going to get at turf at Chaplin Park High School when my kids were 5. Well, now they have it, but my kids are past. So you're not doing it for your kids necessarily. You really got to do it for
You're
the
doing it
future.
for the future.
The one downside of a referendum on the purchase of land is you're telling the sellers how much money you're gonna spend. It's different when you're doing construction, because then now you're going bidding against, other people coming in. You're captive to the landowners when you do a referendum and it passed to buy land. So generally, from what I've seen and talking to other people, cities generally don't do referendums for land purchases. For that reason, that's the main reason, because you don't, it's different when you're gonna do something that's gonna go out to bid for construction. That's different. So that's my thought on that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. I don't have any other questions.
I don't have any
Good
questions.
information. No, I think obviously if we look, what are we at for population right now? Are we at 10,000 yet?
Officially, no. We won't officially be at 10,000 until the next census, but unofficially, yeah,
Yes.
we're probably about 10,000. We're like 33 or 3,400 homes. We're about
Okay.
2.9 per home, so about 10.
Yeah. So, and what our official numbers for, because you said that for every 10,000 should be 10,
100 acres.
100 acres of parks and playground area.
and you said
mowed.
right about 50?
Yeah.
So,
And then, again, there's a range on that, but the low end I saw was around 70 was the low.
Right.
But the average is right around 100.
no,
Actually, the smaller towns tend to add more than some of the larger ones. Some larger ones, like Minneapolis, has a lot. That was
They're
just-
unique.
They're unique, yes. Yeah.
that's great information. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Thank
you
you.
for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. And I think item C, I assume is Marty, the revised amenities list.
Yeah, I supplied it. I made the
looked at
amendments
it.
that you
Looks great.
did, so I just wanted to get your approval on it, and then I don't know, if you want me to email you out a hard copy, a digital copy of that, so you can have it for your reference?
Yeah. I think that'd be
That
nice.
would be wonderful.
Okay.
Oh, should we quick adjourn?
So it looks good to me.
Awesome. So I think we
Do we need a
need a
motion?
motion and
now?
everything to approve it then?
I guess, yeah.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Do we have a
Since we're
motion
here.
to approve the list as in the packet?
I motion.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Approved. Anything else?
No, that's all I have.
I was at Sundance Woods Park, is it called, right?
Yep.
The zip line's out of commission. I'm assuming you guys are aware of that, though, because it was chained up.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We ordered parts, they're back ordered. They were meant to be shipping on August 28th. I haven't seen them yet,
Sure.
so.
Do you know what happened?
Um,
Like the wire's all chewed up, so I don't know
yeah, I think there was something going on there.
Foul play?
There was some older kids playing on it, and there were 3 of them on it, bouncing up and down, and it frayed the
Sure.
the zip line. So,
Sure. That's a great park. The kids had a great time.
yeah, it's nice up there.
Cool. Anyone else have anything?
I don't have anything.
Do we want to discuss any of this stuff at all, or anything you guys want to go over from that? I feel like they did a good job of explaining what they do, and I don't know, I've been around CDAA my whole life, so they do a great program. I don't think there's any issues at all, but obviously the cost is the biggest thing,
Yeah.
you know, like it seems great, obviously but do we have, Matt, do we have any city land that is sitting, okay.
No, is it on the CIP? Is it part of the 2028? We're going to do a huge referendum, according to Zach, to pay for that and the firehouse and a
Yeah,
bajillion
I'm
other
not
things.
sure on the referendum part about it, but I know that we're
A bond, not a referendum, but a bond that year.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's what he said during the work session. Because there's a lot of stuff slotted for 1 year. I think it was 28
Yeah.
was the year. Whatever. I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
that's
Maybe it's
right.
31, whatever. Whatever
I
the
think
year
it-
is. I think it's 28, though.
Yeah, I think you're right.
There's a bunch of stuff slotted.
So, yeah,
I'll tell you. Give me a second. It's in here. I just got to find
yeah.
the right page.
I think you're right, it's 2028.
Yeah, it's 28. There's the purchase land for community park. That's 29. 29, I think, is the community park.
And I think we've been saving some funds in the CIP for this over a few years.
150,000 a year.
Yeah.
It looks like they set aside for land. I don't know what that fund is at.
No.
Cool. So 29 is when they're targeting. Is when it's targeted in the CIP. And they've got 2 million set aside in there for it, plus whatever we've been saving.
I didn't have anything else specifically with regards to their discussion.
No, that was a good presentation. That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, we're the park, like the fields back here. Do they get used quite a bit for?
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty much. Are
Yeah.
they always full, or for the most part are they?
Yeah, they'll generally be on the baseball. They'll probably have 3 games going every evening, Monday through Thursday, and then soccer is that's Monday through Thursday as well, soccer there. And then we also do the lacrosse out there early season. And we've had flag football out there a couple of times, but they seem to be moving away from that. I'm not sure how popular flag football is currently. I think it's starting to take a dive after you had the concussion things going on. I think people have started to back off of that a little bit. But they haven't been requiring those from us for a couple of years now.
Interesting. You'd think with all the concussion stuff that flag football would go more people would be playing flag rather than tackle. You know, just from a non-head injury perspective, but.
Yeah, I think it's a bigger perspective that people are looking
Just
at.
away from football in general.
The natural progression is then you're going to want to tackle. And
Fair, yeah. But in general, are these pretty much always like that used? I guess like just thinking about our different spots, like that's being fully utilized. And
They're fully utilized. I mean, spring through the summer, summer break.
I've seen lacrosse there most Thursday evenings when we're doing training. The lacrosse going on.
And I mean, we've had fall soccer out there and stuff. So it depends what their requirements are, and if we can supply the fields for them. Generally, they're used, I would say, 6 to 8 months of the year.
oh, great. Okay.
So yeah.
See, Leathers is growing. There's stuff growing there.
Yeah.
Is that pretty much set for the year? It just does its thing, or do the contractors have more to do, or do you guys?
So I spoke to him the other week. We're going to look at a lot of that stuff that's growing there now is cover crop.
Yep. Sure.
And so we're looking at that. Probably mow it later this year to get a cover crop off to let the smaller stuff get some light and stuff, and then we'll look at it again in next spring, and then we'll see what we got then. But then that next year is when the real work starts on getting that prairie to come in.
And then is that work by the contractors or your guys?
I will get the contract to do that.
Okay.
It's a small fee for doing it, but they know what they're doing better than I do with a prairie,
Sure.
I just get in there with a can of diesel and a match,
You didn't grow up on the prairie yourself?
No.
On that note, before Marty gets himself fired, maybe we
Only joking.
All right, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
I motion adjournment.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.